We're back. It's time for episode 2 of Hammer and Spanner. In this episode, we will do a walkthrough of the CLK's drivetrain. We will go through the clutch, the gearbox, the prop shaft, the differential in the rear, the CV joints and the axles in the back, and also a little bit about the outer hubs in the rear suspension. So let's go for episode 2. As many of you know, one of the hardest parts to get reliable on a drift car is the drivetrain, and this is one of the parts that we have put the most time and effort into. So to start off, if you look at the clutch setup, when you're driving a car that has 800 horsepower and 930 newton at the wheels, it's really important that the clutch never slips, and as well that you have to have a good combination between how much it bites up and how much your drivetrain can take. So in this case, we decided to go with the Sachs Motorsports 200mm clutch. We got it delivered from a bakaxle dealer in Sweden, and we actually used a pressure plate from Sachs. And then we used Tenaci Motorsports clutch discs and also their floaters. So these are the Tenaci Motorsports 4-pack discs together with their own floaters. These are a bit more heavy duty and has been working really good for us. This is the second season running this clutch, and so far so good. Not a single problem so far, and we're really happy with the results. So it's been proven a reliable setup for us. When it comes to flywheel, we have decided to run the Tenaci Motorsport flywheel. It's I think the package is around 12 kilos total with the pressure plate and everything like that. And we also decided to incorporate an interchangeable backplate that Tenaci Motorsports makes. So this backplate, I will show you a little bit of a video here, has 3 different step downs, and this makes it easy for us to, when the clutch gets a bit worn, we can move it down a step, and this way we can use the clutch a lot longer than just using the regular step down. So really good solution, and it's also good that the flywheel doesn't get broken just because you have something go wrong with the surface on the flywheel. You just change the back plate and then you're good to go. When the clutch is a really hard one, you of course have to have a gearbox that can take it, and therefore we decided to go for a dog box in this car, because the last car we had so much problem with the rear axle and the drivetrain. So in this car we decided to go for a Tex T101A dog box. This is a 4-speed dog box, not sequential. It's still the H pattern, so you have 1 up, 2 down, 3rd, 4th, like a regular car. So if you ever hear me say I was running 2nd gear, it's because there's a completely different ratio to this car than a regular car. So the usual purpose of this car gearbox is for NASCAR. So the gears are very long and extremely durable from all the power that we throw at it and torque. So we've been running this since we built the car, and it's yet to break, so we're really happy about that. To make it fit the car, it's quite a lot of work, because of course there's not a bell house for the M104 engines. So thankfully we got help from a guy to make a custom bell house for us. So we have basically taken a bell house from a stock gearbox for a Mercedes, and then we have milled out an adapter plate that has been welded to it. So now we have something that fits to the engine and fits to the gearbox, and this combined makes it all fit to the car. Another thing that's special for Swedish drifting, I guess, I don't know if it's regular in different countries as well, it's this one. This is a Kevlar protection mat for the bell housing. So if a clutch were to explode, this will protect our legs and feet from getting cut off if the flywheel went loose from the engine. So it's a bit tricky, because when we built the car, this was not the regulation. So now that we have this, it's too tight to get the gearbox out without actually loosening in the engine a bit. So that's one of the issues that Emil Fabian Karlsson at E. Karlsson Steel Design will help us rebuild the transmission tunnel a bit. So that's one of the tasks for this winter, actually. One of the things more to make it work is that when you have a clutch setup like this and it's custom, you need to have a push-out bearing. And if you see here, we have done a completely custom setup for this. This is a push-out bearing as well from Bakaxeldelar. And a lot of people, they actually bolt these up, so they're stuck. But we decided to do a setup that allows it to slide. So if you can see here, you get it able to slide forward and backwards, and a little bit sideways as well. This helps it from binding up, and working very good so far. If we move back to the gearbox, we have a little bit of a fun detail that I don't think a lot of people have noticed, but it's the shifter. It's a side shifter, of course, because it's a Tex 101A. But it's the shifter. It's made by Specialsvar, my friend, who helps us do so much work in the lathe for the car. So this is actually a carbon fiber stick with a custom handle on the top. So this hardly weighs anything at all, and it's actually from a bicycle, the seat post. That's a carbon fiber seat post from a mountain bike. So that's a pretty cool detail. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the gearbox. When you have such a high performing gearbox and clutch, you always want to make sure that your prop shaft isn't a problem. And that's why we decided to go with this one. This is a slip joint nozzle, or what you call it, the axle input shaft for the output shaft for the gearbox. So this slides in directly here on the gearbox, as it's meant to be. These gearbox are usually used on solid axle cars, and this means that the axle goes in and out of the gearbox depending on how much the suspension compresses. So in our case, we have not a solid axle, so that means that the diff is in the same place all the time. So this is a bit overkill for us, but we still use it, of course. The prop shaft is steel. It's a 4-inch pipe, so it's extremely big, and it can take definitely all the power that we throw at it, at least. So this is a bit overkill, and we would like to save the weight by maybe go to carbon fiber in the future, but we got to save money somewhere, so we still use this one in the steel. And as you can see here, we also have the well, that was just Billy coming to the garage. Always someone interrupts us when we're doing this kind of shoots, but I guess that's just drifting. So to get back to it, that's the prop shaft. It's really big, it works great. Another rule that we have in Sweden is that we have to have this prop shaft catcher, or what you call it in English, I don't know. This is bolted to the car, and if the prop shaft were to break, it will not go down to the asphalt and maybe possibly push it up in the car. It will be maintained inside this metal ring. So it's a safety feature, we use it, and it's good for us because it keeps us safe. When we come to the back of the prop shaft, this is one of the more custom parts that we use on the car. Instead of using the traditional BMW input shaft to the 210 diff, we have decided that we wanted to use the more solid one from the American cars. So we're using a it's called like a horseshoe mounting point for the CV joint. I will show a bit of a clip here, and you can see how it works. It's just like two small handcuffs you put over the CV joint, and this holds it in place. Really sturdy solution, and it works good as well. It's easy to take down and off, and that's helpful when you're maybe changing a differential or something like that. So that's good. When it comes to the differential, we actually drive a BMW Diff. So as you can see here in the subframe, I will show you a video of this as well. We have re-welded the back piece of the subframe to make the BMW differential fit. So it's a 210 from a 540, and the gear ratio is 3.64. And that's the only one we have so far. We're trying to find out the solution to get some more different ratios for next year, because I think it's a very competitive edge if you can change the gear ratio depending on the track, and that's one of the things we have not had the time to fix yet. So, and as I told you in the last episode, we still use the Mercedes stock knuckles, and you can see it here. This is Mercedes stock knuckle, and this is the E34 hub assembly. So this is the E34 540 hub with the bolt pattern. So we use a BMW bolt pattern in the back, and then we have a custom bearing with the E34 inner hub as well. So this makes it possible to run the 210 drive shaft, I think it's called 108mm CV joints. Otherwise the knuckle is pretty much stock. We only do this. You can see this small plate has been welded in to reinforce the ears a bit. This is the top mount for camber and traction bar. So they are pretty heavily strained when we're running so much grip, and they have a tendency to crack here. So that's why we weld them. And that's one of the work that we're probably going to do, maybe a custom knuckle in the future. For the last part then, you have this. This is the custom drive shaft. They're basically exactly like a 540 E34 axle, but I think they're like 5 centimeters longer. And they're made by Fixit Transmission in Sweden. They have made a custom high performance axle for us, and then we use used stock CV joints from like an old E34. We tried like different brands like CDX and a lot of different brands, but they actually exploded when the heat came to them. So after going back to a bit of a worn CV joint, it's actually performed better, because when they're too tight in the bearing clearance, they actually pinch and explode instead. So these ones that are worn, they have more of a clearance and can expand more by heat. So these have actually been a very successful recipe for us. I think we only broke one, and I don't think it even broke. We just changed it because it was a bit more glitchy than the other one. So cheap but effective way of getting more bearing clearance in your CV joints, I guess. So we'll see if we keep running those, or if we maybe go over to a motorsport brand in the future. So yeah, that's about it for the transmission. I hope you got answers to most of the questions. I might have missed something out, but as I told you in the last episode, let us know in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them in the comments instead. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure you subscribe, share it with your friends, and talk to you soon.